Natalie, 34, stood frozen in the doorway of the empty venue, her designer luggage still in hand. The decorations hung limp, half taken down. My mother Diane spotted me first, nudging my father Howard with an amused smirk. "Oh, sweetie, it was yesterday," she chuckled, eyeing my travel-worn appearance. "We tried calling. The caterer packed everything up, but we can bring you leftovers tomorrow." The room erupted in laughter while I clutched the receipt for $20,000 in my pocket. If you value family respect, like and subscribe now. I never thought my career success would make me an outsider in my own family. My name is Natalie Palmer, and I clawed my way up from nothing to become a marketing executive at one of Chicago's most prestigious firms. My six-figure salary came from years of 60-hour work weeks, networking events where I knew no one, and determination that burned when my family's support didn't. Growing up in Westfield, a small town where ambition was viewed with suspicion, I always felt different. At 7, I set up a lemonade stand with business cards while other kids played. My mother Diane laughed when I proudly showed her my $20 profit. "That's cute, honey, but don't you want to play with your friends instead?" My father Howard barely looked up from his newspaper. By 12, I was designing websites for local businesses while my parents attended every one of my brother Brandon's baseball games and my sister Monica's dance recitals. My academic achievements collected dust in drawers while their trophies claimed the living room shelves. At 16, when I won a statewide business competition, my parents sent my Aunt Clara to the ceremony because they had already committed to Monica's much less significant dance showcase. The pattern was clear, but I never stopped hoping for their approval. After graduating with honors and landing my first marketing job in Chicago, their response was a tepid "don't work too hard," rather than congratulations. Each promotion came with similar indifference. When I purchased my downtown condo, my mother asked why I needed so much space for just one person. Despite this history, when Lancaster Marketing promoted me to executive vice president last spring with a substantial bonus, something in me rekindled. Perhaps now, with tangible success, I could finally bridge the gap with my family. Maybe they just needed to see me in my element, confident and accomplished, to understand me. The idea came during a rare phone call with Brandon. "We never get together anymore," he said, sounding genuinely disappointed. "Everyone's so scattered." His words planted a seed that grew into what I thought was a brilliant plan. A lavish family reunion at Silver Lake Resort, entirely funded by me. For 3 months, I devoted every spare moment to planning. I researched dozens of venues before selecting Silver Lake for its picturesque setting and family-friendly amenities. I created custom invitations with childhood photos of each family member. I arranged accommodations for 25 relatives, some I barely knew, but included to make the gathering complete. The cost added up quickly: $8,000 for the venue, $6,000 for catering, $4,000 for accommodations, and another $2,000 for activities and decorations. $20,000 for my savings, but I convinced myself it was an investment in family bonds. Monica seemed enthusiastic during our planning calls, though she always had one more thing to add to the budget. The premium open bar package would be so much better than the standard, she insisted. And Uncle George loves single malt scotch. I agreed to every suggestion, hoping her involvement meant she valued my effort. Brandon's support surprised me. His text messages showed genuine excitement. "This is going to be amazing, Nat. Everyone's talking about it." His words fueled my determination to create the perfect reunion. Behind every decision lurked my secret hope that funding this extravagant gathering would finally earn my parents' approval. I selected activities that would appeal to each family member. Golf for my father, a spa day for my mother, water sports for the younger cousins. I remembered everyone's dietary restrictions and favorite foods. I even arranged for a photographer to document what I hoped would be heartfelt reconnections. Everything was perfectly arranged for Saturday, July 15th. Then disaster struck 3 days before the event. Our agency's biggest client faced a public relations crisis that threatened to destroy their brand. As the executive responsible for their account, I couldn't delegate the emergency response. I spent 48 hours in crisis management, crafting statements, coordinating with journalists, and putting out fires. By Thursday night, the situation had stabilized enough for me to travel, but I'd missed the Friday welcome dinner. I sent multiple texts to my family explaining the situation. Critical client emergency. Taking red-eye flight tomorrow. Will arrive Saturday morning for the main event. Everything is paid for. Please start without me. The responses were brief. Monica. Okay. Brandon. No problem. Mom. We understand how important your work is. I interpreted their brevity as disappointment, but assumed they understood. The journey to Silver Lake was challenging. My flight delayed, the rental car company giving away my reservation. Traffic backed up for miles due to an accident. By the time I arrived at the resort on Saturday afternoon, my stress had transformed into anticipation. I'd missed the morning activities, but would arrive in time for the main family dinner. Pulling into the circular drive of Silver Lake Resort, I felt a flutter of excitement. My trunk held carefully selected gifts for everyone. After checking in, I headed straight to the grand ballroom where the reunion was scheduled. As I approached, I noticed the absence of music or chatter. My pace quickened, unease growing with each step. When I pushed open the double doors, I entered a scene that instantly broke my heart. The room stood nearly empty, decorations half removed, cleanup crews stacking chairs. And there, gathered in a small cluster collecting their belongings, was my family. The grand ballroom looked like a beautiful dream abandoned midway. Silver and blue streamers, the colors I had specifically chosen to match our family's generational photo I had enlarged and framed as a centerpiece, hung limply from one wall while the other stood bare. Round tables with scattered chairs remained, crumb-covered plates stacked haphazardly by the cleanup crew. The custom photo wall I had commissioned featuring our family through the years stood partially disassembled, some photos already packed in boxes. Confusion washed over me as I spotted my mother Diane chatting with my Aunt Margaret near the dessert table, where a few lonely cupcakes remained on an otherwise empty three-tiered stand. My father Howard was checking his watch while my brother Brandon gathered gift bags. My sister Monica posed for a selfie with our cousins under the Palmer family reunion banner that now hung crookedly from one fastener. Natalie? My mother's voice carried across the room, turning every head in my direction. Her surprise seemed genuine, though it quickly morphed into something else entirely. What are you doing here? I stood motionless, my travel-weary body suddenly unable to process what I was seeing. What do you mean? The reunion, it's today. My mother exchanged glances with my father, who approached with a bemused expression. No, sweetie, it was yesterday. Did you get the dates mixed up? The room grew quiet as family members turned to observe the unfolding scene. I felt the weight of every stare as I struggled to find words. Yesterday? But everything was scheduled for today. Saturday, the 15th. We moved it to Friday, my mother explained casually, as if discussing a minor schedule change for coffee. When you said you couldn't make the welcome dinner, we decided to just do everything yesterday instead. We tried calling. My phone had been on airplane mode during the flight and then died during my navigation to the resort. But that wasn't the point. You moved the entire reunion? Without telling me? My voice sounded small even to my own ears. Well, you know how it is with your work always coming first, my father added with a dismissive wave. We figured you'd understand. From across the room, my cousin Heather approached with an apologetic expression. I tried to tell them we should wait, she said quietly. I said we should at least split the activities between both days. Monica swiped through photos on her phone, thrusting the screen toward me with forced sympathy. Look how fun it was. We did the boat tour, the family games, everything. The dinner was amazing. That caterer you hired was worth every penny. Every penny I paid, I thought bitterly. Brandon avoided my gaze entirely, suddenly fascinated with the contents of the gift bag in his hands. When he finally glanced up, his discomfort was palpable, but he offered no defense. Aunt Margaret, never one to miss an opportunity for a barbed comment, sighed dramatically. Well, this is typical, isn't it? Natalie too busy with her important career to attend a family function. Some things never change. Her words transported me instantly to my 12th birthday. My parents had scheduled my party at the local bowling alley, but when Monica developed the mild cold that morning, they rescheduled everything without consulting me. By the time they remembered to tell me, half my friends couldn't attend the new date. It's not a big deal, my mother had said. At least the people who matter will be there. At 16, they forgot my academic awards ceremony entirely, only to justify it later by saying, "These things happen in busy families." When I graduated college, they arrived 2 hours late, missing my speech as valedictorian because they went to breakfast with Monica and her boyfriend first. "We saved you some cake," they'd offered then, much like now. "The premium alcohol you ordered was excellent," Uncle Robert called from across the room, raising an empty Scotch bottle in salute. "Top shelf stuff." I glanced around the room, spotting the elaborate photo wall I had planned. It featured family pictures throughout the years, professionally arranged and mounted. Looking closer, I noticed how few included me. In most, I was either absent or standing at the periphery while Monica and Brandon dominated the center of every frame. It seemed an unintentional but perfect metaphor. "Don't look so upset," my mother said, patting my arm. "We'll bring you leftovers tomorrow for brunch." The caterer packed everything up nicely. Leftovers. The word echoed in my mind. Hadn't that been the story of my relationship with my family? Always receiving the leftovers of their attention, their pride, their love. "I need to check in," I muttered, turning toward the door. "We're all heading out this evening," my father called after me. "Most of us have work tomorrow, but we'll see you at brunch." The hotel receptionist gave me a pitying look as I approached the desk. "Palmer." "Checking in," I said quietly. "Oh, Miss Palmer. We were wondering if you were still coming since your family checked out early." Her fingers clicked across the keyboard. "We have your suite ready, though. The one you paid for through tomorrow." In the privacy of my suite, I collapsed onto the bed and pulled out my phone, finally charging it. As it powered on, notifications flooded the screen. Social media alerts dominated, tags and family photos, group pictures of activities I'd planned, paid for and missed. There they were, my entire family, enjoying the boat cruise I'd arranged. Another photo showed them at the group dinner, raising glasses in a toast. "To family," read the caption. Another showed the custom cake I'd ordered, featuring our family tree. The professional photographer I'd hired had captured everything beautifully. Monica had posted the most extensively, including a selfie with our parents captioned, "Nothing more important than family time." #blessed, #family first. The irony stung sharply. As I scrolled, a text from Monica appeared. "Are you mad? Don't be dramatic. You're always working anyway, so we didn't think you'd mind. Call me when you get in." When I called, her tone dripped with practiced concern. "You could have confirmed your arrival time," she said, as if I were somehow at fault. I did confirm. Multiple times. I told everyone I'd be there Saturday. Well, everyone else could make Friday, and it just made more sense. I paid for everything, Monica. $20,000 for a family reunion I didn't get to attend. "No one asked you to spend that much," she replied defensively. "That was your choice. Anyway, it's just a party. Don't be so sensitive." After we hung up, I allowed myself to break down. In the silence of the luxurious suite I'd booked as part of the family package, I cried for the little girl who'd always believed that if she achieved enough, earned enough, gave enough, her family would finally see her value. Sleep evaded me that night. By 5 in the morning, I had abandoned the pretense, sitting cross-legged on the king-sized bed, scrolling through more photos of the reunion I'd missed. Each image twisted the knife deeper. The custom event I'd meticulously planned for months had happened without me, as if my presence were an afterthought. A new album appeared on my cousin Tammy's profile, Palmer Family Fun. It showed Uncle George, who had traveled from Arizona despite his arthritis, holding a speech card. The caption read, "Uncle George came all this way especially to see Natalie and share memories of her grandmother. Sad she couldn't make it." My throat tightened. Grandma June had been my only ally in the family, the one who recognized my different path and encouraged it. Before she died 10 years ago, she had given Uncle George her jewelry box to pass on to me, when the time was right. I never received it. My phone buzzed with a text from Brandon. Hope you're not upset about yesterday. We thought it made sense to consolidate since everyone was already there Friday. Mom and Dad said you'd understand since work comes first for you. The familiar justification echoed a pattern established in childhood. When I was 8, Christmas morning revealed presents for Monica and Brandon piled high under the tree, while mine were notably fewer. Later, I discovered my parents had given Monica my requested art set because she showed more interest in drawing lately. They hastily wrapped some of my old books for me instead. Don't be so materialistic, they said when I cried. Christmas isn't about presents. My phone rang, displaying my father's name. I answered with a dull hello. Morning, sunshine. We're checking out and thought we'd stop by before hitting the road. I'm not feeling well, I lied. Don't be so sensitive, he replied, his go-to phrase whenever I expressed hurt. We'll bring those leftovers by around 10. Your mother packaged up some of everything. Dad, do you understand what happened? I spent $20,000 on a family reunion that was rescheduled without my knowledge. Now, don't exaggerate. It wasn't rescheduled, just consolidated. And no one forced you to spend that money. That's not the point. Look, we'll see you at brunch and talk then. We saved you plenty of food. After hanging up, I wandered down to the hotel lobby, seeking coffee and distance from my thoughts. The young woman at the concierge desk smiled sympathetically. Miss Palmer? I was working yesterday when your family checked out. I'm so sorry about the confusion. What confusion? She hesitated. About the date change. Your sister mentioned you were dealing with a work emergency, but it seemed odd that they changed everything when the cancellation policy is so strict. You still had to pay for everything. My stomach dropped. Wait, what are you saying? Did they know about the cancellation policy? Your mother specifically asked about it 2 weeks ago. We explained that the food, venue, and activities were non-refundable within 14 days of the event. 2 weeks ago. My mind raced. They had planned this switch long before my work emergency. I thanked the concierge and retreated to a quiet corner of the lobby, trying to process this new information. My phone chimed with an email notification. A forwarded message from Monica to my mother, accidentally sent to me. Above the forwarded content, Monica had written, Mom, should we tell Natalie about the date change yet? Everyone's confirmed for Friday now. The original email showed a thread between my family members dating back 17 days, discussing the date change from Saturday to Friday because it worked better for everyone else. Not once had anyone consulted me, despite knowing I was paying for everything. My hands shook as I scrolled through the thread. Monica had spearheaded the change, writing, Natalie's always working anyway, so she probably won't mind. Worst case, she shows up Saturday and misses it. My mother had replied, she'll understand. Family has never been her priority anyway. The venue manager, Michael, found me still sitting there an hour later, staring blankly at my phone. Miss Palmer? I wanted to check if everything is all right. Your family seemed to enjoy the event yesterday, but we were surprised when they said you wouldn't be attending since you handled all the arrangements personally. They told you I wouldn't be attending? He shifted uncomfortably. Your mother mentioned you probably wouldn't make it anyway due to work commitments. She said not to worry about waiting for you on Saturday. Did she happen to say this around the time she asked about the cancellation policy? His expression confirmed my suspicions. Actually, yes. About 2 weeks ago. Back in my room, I found the handwritten notes I had included with each invitation, expressing my excitement to reconnect with everyone. In the venue's trash bin, several had been discarded, unread. I called my best friend Rachel, the only person who truly understood my family dynamics. They did what? She exclaimed after I explained the situation. They held the reunion without me. After I paid for everything. Nat, I hate to say this, but this isn't just thoughtlessness. This was deliberate. What do you mean? They've been doing this your entire life. Excluding you, then making you feel guilty for being excluded. It's a pattern of emotional manipulation. And now they've escalated to financial exploitation. Her words crystallized something I'd felt but couldn't articulate. My family had been serving me emotional leftovers my entire life, the remnants of attention, affection, and respect after everyone else had been fully served. That evening, I found myself at the hotel bar, contemplating calling my mother to apologize for my sensitivity. The familiar urge to smooth things over, to make myself smaller to fit their narrative, was powerful. The bartender, Grace, noticed my distraction. Tough day. I surprised myself by sharing the condensed version of my situation. Her response was unexpected. Sounds like they don't respect your time, your money, or your feelings. In my experience, people who truly love you respect all three. Her simple observation struck me profoundly. Back in my room, I pulled out the journal I always traveled with and began writing, analyzing the patterns of my family relationships with new clarity. Pages filled with examples of times I'd accepted scraps of affection while watching others receive the feast. At 3 a.m, something shifted within me. The realization wasn't just about this reunion, it was about 34 years of accepting less than I deserved. The pain transformed into something unexpected: resolve. I would no longer accept leftovers in any form. Not from my family, not from relationships, not from life. I deserved a full portion of respect, served fresh. With this new clarity, I began formulating a plan for the leftovers brunch my parents had so casually offered. The hotel kitchen opened at 6 and I was waiting. Michael, the venue manager, listened intently as I explained what I wanted to arrange. So instead of the leftovers your family promised to bring, you want us to prepare a fresh gourmet breakfast in the private dining room?
Exactly.
The works. Fresh pastries, omelet station, prime rib carving station, mimosas, the premium coffee service. Everything you'd offer for a high-end corporate breakfast. He smiled, understanding dawning in his eyes. And you want it ready for 9? Precisely 9. And I'll need the round table, not the rectangular one. 8 place settings. Consider it done, Miss Palmer. Next, I sent a carefully worded text to my family, looking forward to leftovers brunch at 9 a.m. in the resort cedar room. Everyone's welcome. The resort staff will direct you. Responses trickled in quickly. Mom. See you then, sweetie. Packing up the food now. Brandon. I'll be there. Monica. Fine, but we need to leave by 10. Dad. Looking forward to it. At 8:30, I stood in my suite, applying the finishing touches to my appearance. I had selected my power outfit, a tailored crimson blazer over a silk blouse, designer jeans, and the pearl necklace Grandma June had given me before she died. For when you need to remember your worth, she had whispered. My hair fell in smooth waves, my makeup understated but flawless. This wasn't about vanity, it was about armor. Today, I would stand in my truth without flinching. The cedar room looked stunning. Michael had exceeded my expectations. The round table was set with fine china and crystal, fresh flowers forming an elegant centerpiece. The serving stations gleamed with silver chafing dishes, staffed by chefs in crisp white uniforms. The mimosa bar featured freshly squeezed juices and premium champagne. Perfect, I whispered, taking in the scene. I had chosen the round table strategically. No one could sit at the head, no hierarchy could be established. We would all face each other as equals. At precisely 9, my family arrived in a cluster, my mother carrying 2 large insulated bags presumably containing the promised leftovers. Their chatter ceased abruptly as they entered the room and absorbed the scene. What's all this? My father asked, confusion evident. Good morning, I replied calmly. Please take a seat anywhere. But we brought the leftovers, my mother said, lifting the bags slightly as if I might have missed them. That won't be necessary.
Eve aren't breakfast.
Their confusion deepened as they reluctantly took seats. Monica's eyes narrowed suspiciously while Brandon looked uncomfortable. My parents exchanged glances, clearly trying to gauge the situation. My mother attempted to regain control. This is unnecessary, Natalie. Always so dramatic. I merely smiled and nodded to the waiting staff. They began serving mimosas and coffee as the chef approached to take omelet orders. My family sat stiffly, caught off guard by the unexpected formality. "Is this your way of making a point?" Monica asked acidly. "Because it feels a little passive-aggressive." "Not at all," I replied, voice steady. "I simply thought, why settle for leftovers when we can have something fresh?" Once everyone had been served and the staff had discreetly withdrawn to their stations, I placed my napkin in my lap and looked around the table. "I want to thank you all for coming this morning. I've been doing a lot of thinking about our family dynamics, particularly in light of recent events." "Here we go," my father muttered. "Dad, I've listened to you my entire life. I'm asking for 10 minutes of the same courtesy." His mouth closed in surprise at my directness. "For 34 years, I've been accepting emotional leftovers from this family. The scraps of attention after everyone else has been fully served. Yesterday was simply the most literal manifestation of a pattern that's existed since my childhood." I turned to Monica. "2 weeks ago, you began coordinating a date change for the reunion without informing me, despite knowing I was funding the entire event." Her eyes widened. "How did you?" I removed my phone, displaying the accidentally forwarded email thread. "You wrote, and I quote, 'Natalie's always working anyway, so she probably won't mind. Worst case, she shows up Saturday and misses it.'" Brandon shifted uncomfortably while my parents looked stunned. "That was private," Monica sputtered. "So, was the $20,000 I spent on a family reunion I was deliberately excluded from?" I turned to my mother. "You told the venue manager not to expect me, that family has never been my priority. You asked about the cancellation policy, knowing full well I would still be charged for everything." "Now wait just a minute," my father interjected. "I'm not finished." I continued calmly. "What's particularly interesting is discovering that some family members were told different stories. Uncle George was told I canceled. Cousin Heather was told I had approved the date change. Aunt Margaret attempted to interrupt, but I held up my hand firmly. For years, I've accepted being the family outlier. The one whose birthday parties could be rescheduled, whose achievements could be missed, whose presence was optional. I convinced myself that if I just achieved more, gave more, proved my worth more conclusively, things would change. I reached into my blazer pocket and removed the receipts for the reunion expenses, placing them on the table. But what I've realized is that this isn't about what I do or don't do. It's about a dynamic that you're all comfortable with, where Natalie gives and everyone else takes. Where Natalie's time, money, and feelings are considered less valuable than everyone else's. I stood up, placing both hands on the table and looking each family member in the eye. I'm no longer participating in that dynamic. From now on, my boundary is simple. I expect the same respect I give. I expect my time, my resources, and my feelings to be valued equally to everyone else's. My father's face had reddened. "This is ridiculous. We're family." Yes, we are. And that's precisely why this pattern is so harmful. Family should be where we feel most valued, not least. "So, what are you saying?" my mother asked, her voice small. "I'm saying I'm done accepting leftovers. I've donated an additional $20,000 to the Family Therapy Center of Chicago in all of your names. If you're interested in building a healthier relationship with me, that would be a good place to start." I picked up my purse and nodded to Michael, who stood discreetly by the door. "The breakfast is paid for. Enjoy it fresh, not as leftovers. Michael will bring the check for any additional items directly to the table." With that, I walked out, heart pounding but step steady. For the first time in my life, I had refused to make myself smaller to accommodate their comfort. The weight of 34 years of unmet expectations lifted from my shoulders with each step away from the Cedar Room. The gardens behind Silver Lake Resort offered a tranquil refuge. I walked the stone paths, breathing deeply, feeling strangely light despite the intensity of the confrontation I'd just initiated. Near a small pond, I found a bench partially hidden by weeping willows and sat down, allowing myself to fully absorb what had just happened. My phone vibrated with a text from Heather. Whatever you said in there has everyone shook. Monica stormed out. Your parents look stunned. For what it's worth, I've always thought you deserved better treatment. It took courage to stand up to them. Her words validated my actions when doubt began creeping in. Before I could respond, another figure appeared on the garden path. Uncle George, moving slowly with his cane, approached my secluded bench. Mind if I join you? He asked, his voice gentle. Please, I replied, making room. He lowered himself carefully beside me, silent for a moment as he gathered his thoughts. Your grandmother June would have been proud of you today. Tears sprang to my eyes at the mention of Grandma June. You think so? I know so. She faced similar treatment from the family, you know. Her success in business made everyone uncomfortable. They preferred her in a supporting role, not a leading one. This was news to me. I never knew that. She never complained. But she did recognize herself in you. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. She asked me to give you this when you were ready to stand in your power. I'd say that time is now. Inside the pouch was a delicate gold bracelet engraved with the words, Your worth is inherent. I clasped it around my wrist, feeling a connection to my grandmother stronger than ever before. Uncle George patted my hand. Not everyone will understand your boundaries. Some might never respect them, but that doesn't make them any less necessary. As he made his way back to the hotel, 3 younger cousins I barely knew approached tentatively. Emma, Zoe, and Lily, all in their early 20s, asked if they could talk with me. What you did in there was amazing, Emma said. We've all felt sidelined in different ways by the family dynamics. The way they treat ambitious women especially, added Lily. I'm starting my own business, and the family acts like it's a cute hobby. Would you consider mentoring us?
Zoe asked.
We could do monthly video calls or something. Their request touched me deeply. Perhaps my stand could help change patterns for the next generation. We exchanged numbers and made plans for a group call the following month. My phone rang as I returned to my room. Brandon's name flashed on the screen. Natalie, what the hell was that? He demanded, though his voice lacked conviction. That was me establishing boundaries after years of disrespect. You embarrassed everyone in front of the resort staff. I'm not responsible for the embarrassment that comes from having your actions brought to light. A long pause followed. I didn't know about the emails. About them planning the date change 2 weeks ago. But you went along with it without questioning why I wasn't consulted. I guess I did. His voice softened. We've always followed Mom and Dad's lead when it comes to you. It was easier. Easier for whom? Another pause. I need to think about some things. Monica's response was less reflective. Her voicemails progressed from angry accusations, how dare you humiliate us like that, to defensive justifications, you know you're always working anyway, to reluctant acknowledgement, fine, maybe we should have told you about the date change. My parents attempted to triangulate, calling other family members to persuade them I was overreacting. Aunt Clara called to tell me I should apologize for making a scene. Uncle Robert suggested I was too sensitive about everything. I responded to each with the same calm statement. I understand you're uncomfortable with my boundaries, but they're not negotiable. 2 weeks after returning to Chicago, I began sessions with Dr. Stephanie Chen, a family systems therapist. She helped me understand how I'd been cast in the role of family outsider and how that pattern had shaped my relationships beyond my family. The scapegoat often becomes the highest achiever, she explained. You try to earn the love that should be freely given. But no achievement will ever be enough because the withholding isn't about your performance. It's about maintaining the family system. With her guidance, I established monthly video calls with relatives who demonstrated respect for my boundaries. Uncle George, Heather, and my 3 young cousins. Our conversations were genuine, supportive, and reciprocal in a way my family interactions had never been. When November arrived, my mother called about Thanksgiving plans. We're doing dinner at 4 this year. I assume you'll drive down Wednesday night. Actually, I won't be joining this year, I replied. I've made other arrangements. But it's Thanksgiving, she protested, as if the holiday trumped all boundaries. I'm still working on establishing healthier patterns with the family. I don't think a high-pressure holiday gathering is the right environment for that work right now. This is ridiculous, Natalie. It's just dinner. It's never been just dinner, Mom. It's been a reinforcement of family dynamics that I'm working to change. Instead, I hosted a small Thanksgiving gathering in my condo with Rachel, her partner Thomas, and a few friends who'd become chosen family over the years. We cooked together, shared stories, and expressed genuine gratitude for each other's presence. The absence of tension and performance was revelatory. In December, a surprising email arrived from my father. "I've been thinking about what you said at the resort. I don't agree with all of it, but I can see how some of our actions might have made you feel undervalued. That wasn't our intention. Your mother and I are trying to understand." It wasn't a complete acknowledgement, but it was more reflection than I'd ever received from him. I responded with appreciation for his willingness to consider my perspective and suggested resources that might help him understand further. Over the following months, relationships with my supportive relatives deepened. Heather and I discovered shared interests beyond family connections. Uncle George shared wisdom from his own life experiences. My young cousins sought advice about career and boundary setting that I was uniquely positioned to offer. In March, I attended a cousin's wedding on my terms, arriving and departing when it suited me, engaging primarily with relatives who treated me with respect, and excusing myself when conversations turned toxic. Monica observed this new approach with obvious irritation, but made no attempt to challenge it directly. The most remarkable change occurred in my professional life. Without the emotional drain of constantly seeking family approval, my creative energy flourished. I developed an innovative marketing campaign that earned our agency industry recognition and brought in 3 major new clients. By spring, I had begun dating Jason Mitchell, an architectural engineer I met at a charity event. Our relationship developed with a healthy pace and mutual respect that contrasted sharply with my previous relationships, which had often mimicked my family's dynamics. "I notice you never apologize for your success," he commented one evening. "I like that about you." His observation made me realize how much I'd grown. The woman who had spent $20,000 trying to buy family approval had been replaced by someone who understood her inherent worth couldn't be purchased or earned. It simply was. 1 year after the fateful reunion, I hosted a small dinner party in my renovated condo. Around my table sat the people who had supported my journey: Rachel and Thomas, Uncle George, Heather and her husband Carl, and Jason, now my partner of 6 months. Notably absent were those who couldn't respect my boundaries. My parents remained resistant, though occasionally sending tentative overtures. Monica had retreated entirely after her manipulative tactics failed to work. Brandon, surprisingly, had undergone his own transformation. After 3 months of minimal contact following the confrontation, he had reached out with a different tone. "I've been seeing a therapist," he admitted during a coffee meeting. "Watching what happened with you made me realize I've been playing a role in our family that isn't healthy either." Over time, our relationship had rebuilt on healthier ground. He sat now at my dinner table, contributing genuinely to conversations without the competitive edge that had characterized our interactions throughout childhood. "I never realized how exhausting it was," he confided later that evening, "maintaining the family narrative about you. It's like we all had assigned parts in a play no one was allowed to question." My relationship with Monica remained strained. Her attempts to maintain the old dynamics continued. Subtle digs about my sensitivity, efforts to exclude me from family information, attempts to triangulate with other relatives. When these tactics failed to elicit my former pattern of overcompensation, her communications dwindled to obligatory holiday texts. My parents exhibited a pattern of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. My mother occasionally acknowledged specific instances of favoritism from my childhood, though always with qualifications. "We didn't realize how it looked," or "We were just trying to give you independence." My father struggled more openly with the changing dynamics. "I don't understand why everything has to be so complicated now," he complained during a brief phone call. "Why can't we just be family without all these rules?" "They're not rules, Dad. They're boundaries. And they've always existed. I'm just enforcing them now. The professional growth that began after setting boundaries accelerated throughout the year. Lancaster Marketing promoted me to Chief Strategy Officer, a position previously held by men 20 years my senior. My innovative campaigns for sustainable brands earned industry recognition and brought ethical clients eager to work with us. You've always had the talent, my mentor Evelyn noted during our monthly lunch. But now you have the confidence to match it. You're not seeking validation for your ideas anymore. You're simply executing them brilliantly. Jason and I moved forward deliberately in our relationship, each step discussed and mutually agreed upon. His respect for my career ambitions and emotional needs demonstrated daily what healthy love looked like. When he suggested we consider moving in together after the holidays, the decision felt right, not rushed. During Thanksgiving, I declined another family gathering, instead hosting a small celebration at my condo. Brandon attended, bringing his new girlfriend Allison, who remarked afterward, "Your family stories made me nervous about meeting everyone, but this was lovely." "This is my chosen family," I explained. "I'm selective about energy I invite into my space now." That selectivity extended to financial boundaries as well. When Monica called in December asking for a small loan to cover holiday expenses, I declined without guilt or lengthy explanation. "I'm not in a position to lend money right now," I stated simply, ignoring her attempts to trigger obligation. During my final therapy session of the year, Dr. Stephanie noted the transformation in my demeanor. "When you first came here, you were questioning whether you had the right to set boundaries. Now you're maintaining them with confidence." The most surprising part, I admitted, is discovering that the boundaries weren't just for me. Heather tells me her relationship with her parents has improved since she started setting her own limits. And cousin Lily says watching me stand firm gave her courage to do the same with her boyfriend who was pressuring her to abandon her business dreams. In April, I experienced a vivid test of my new boundaries when Uncle George suffered a heart attack. The family gathered at Chicago Memorial Hospital, old tensions temporarily suspended by crisis. As we waited for updates, I observed which relationships demonstrated genuine care and which operated from obligation. My mother attempted to slip back into old patterns, assigning tasks and dictating the appropriate emotional responses. When she tried to override my suggestion about contacting Uncle George's doctor friend for second opinion, I maintained my position calmly. "This approach makes sense, Mom. We're going forward with it." Her surprised expression spoke volumes. In the past, I would have immediately deferred. After Uncle George recovered, he held my hand during a hospital visit and said, "I saw what happened in that waiting room. June would be proud of the woman you've become." His words crystallized my growth. The journey wasn't about rejecting family, but redefining it based on quality connections rather than obligatory ones. The relatives who could adapt to healthier dynamics remained in my inner circle. Those who couldn't existed at a distance that protected my well-being while allowing for potential future growth. My experience inspired me to help others navigate similar family dynamics. I began volunteering monthly at a women's center, facilitating workshops on boundary setting and recognizing emotional manipulation. The gratitude from participants affirmed that my painful experience served a greater purpose. As Jason and I discussed our future, including the possibility of having our own family someday, I reflected on how my experience would shape my approach to parenthood. "I know exactly what not to do," I told him one evening. "Any child in my life will never question their inherent worth or feel they need to earn love through achievement." He squeezed my hand. "That awareness alone makes you different from your parents. You've broken the pattern." Those words echoed as I fingered Grandma June's bracelet, now a daily reminder of my journey. I had indeed broken a generational pattern, not just for myself, but potentially for those who would come after. In refusing to accept leftovers in relationships, I had discovered the feast of authentic connection that had always been my birthright. The profound shift in my life after setting boundaries with my family inspired me to create something meaningful from my experience. 6 months after the confrontation at Silver Lake Resort, I established Full Plate Living, a support group for individuals navigating toxic family dynamics. What began as monthly meetings at a community center in Chicago grew into a network spanning 3 cities. During our sessions, I shared 3 key insights that had transformed my understanding of unhealthy family patterns. First, toxic dynamics require participation. For years, I had unconsciously played my assigned role, responding to exclusion by trying harder, giving more, and accepting less. Breaking the pattern required my refusal to continue the performance. Second, guilt is the mechanism that maintains dysfunctional systems. The discomfort we feel when establishing boundaries isn't evidence we're wrong. It's the system resisting change. True healing begins when we tolerate this discomfort without retreating to old patterns. Third, worth cannot be earned because it already exists. The exhausting pursuit of validation through achievement, generosity, or perfectionism stems from the false belief that worthiness is conditional. These insights aren't just theoretical for me. I explained to a packed room during one session. They're lessons I live daily in my interactions with family, colleagues, and friends. My openness about my journey resonated unexpectedly with colleagues facing similar situations. Victoria from accounting approached me after overhearing a phone conversation where I calmly maintained a boundary with my mother. "I've never heard anyone speak to their mother that way," she confessed. Not angrily, but clearly. Definitely. I didn't know that was allowed. Her comment inspired me to start a blog, No More Leftovers, documenting my ongoing journey with maintaining healthy boundaries. I approached it cautiously, using pseudonyms and altering identifying details while preserving the emotional truth of the experiences. The response was overwhelming, with thousands of comments from readers recognizing their own family dynamics in my stories. "Your words gave me permission to expect better treatment," one reader wrote. "For 40 years, I thought I was selfish for wanting my feelings considered equally to everyone else's in my family." As the blog gained traction, I received an invitation to speak at a women's leadership conference about authenticity in professional and personal relationships. Standing before 300 attendees, I shared how boundary setting had transformed not just my family relationships but my career trajectory as well. For years, I operated from a scarcity mindset, believing I needed to earn my place at both the family table and the conference table, I explained. The mindset shift from "I must prove my worth" to "my worth is inherent" changed everything. The phrase became my life philosophy. I deserve a full plate, not just leftovers. It applied to every aspect of life: relationships, career opportunities, self-care, and dreams for the future. This framework helped me identify when I was accepting less than I deserved in any situation. I developed a simple 3-question assessment for relationships. Does this person respect my time? Do they respect my resources? Do they respect my feelings? If the answer to any question was consistently no, the relationship required either boundaries or reevaluation. The freedom that came from releasing my need for toxic approval transformed my life in unexpected ways. I took creative risks professionally that previously would have terrified me. I expressed opinions in meetings without first calculating how they might be received. I pursued interests and hobbies for pure enjoyment rather than achievement. As my support group expanded, I recognized patterns in how family systems responded to boundary setting. The initial reaction was almost always resistance, often through guilt, anger, or dismissal. If the boundary holder maintained consistency, the system either adapted or the relationship naturally created distance. The most gratifying aspect of my journey was witnessing its impact on younger family members. Emma launched her marketing consultancy with confidence, turning down family pressure to take a more stable corporate job. Zoe established clear boundaries with her critical mother, transforming their relationship. Lily ended an emotionally manipulative relationship after recognizing patterns similar to our family dynamics. "You showed us another way," Emma told me during one of our mentor sessions. Not just through advice, but by example. When Uncle George celebrated his 75th birthday, the gathering revealed which family relationships had evolved and which remained stuck in old patterns. My parents attended, demonstrating awkward but genuine attempts to respect my boundaries. Monica maintained her distance, clearly uncomfortable with a dynamic she couldn't control. Brandon engaged authentically, having done his own healing work through therapy. Most revealing was observing how different relatives responded when Uncle George publicly thanked me for organizing the celebration and acknowledged my role in bringing honesty to family relationships. Those who had done their own work nodded in agreement. Those still invested in the old narrative shifted uncomfortably. My relationship with Jason deepened as we moved in together, discussing marriage and the possibility of children. "How would you handle it?" he asked one evening. "If our child someday feels like an outsider in their extended family?" The question prompted deep reflection about the family I might someday create. I'd validate their experience rather than dismissing it, I answered finally. I'd help them establish appropriate boundaries while understanding that their worth isn't determined by others' treatment. "That's how I know you'll be an amazing mother," he replied. "You've transformed your pain into wisdom." That transformation didn't mean perfect healing or complete resolution with every family member. Some relationships improved significantly, others marginally, and some remained distant. The difference was that I no longer measured my success by whether I could fix these relationships. My well-being no longer depended on their evolution. During a call with Dr. Stephanie, now an occasional consultant rather than regular therapist, I shared this realization. "The most profound shift," I explained, "is that I've stopped trying to earn a place at a table where I was never welcome. Instead, I've built my own table and filled it with people who value mutual respect." "And if your family eventually wants a place at your table?" she asked. "There will always be room for those who can respect the boundaries. But I'll never again accept leftovers in relationships when I deserve a full serving of respect." This journey taught me that family boundaries aren't about rejection but protection. They create the space for authentic connection while preventing harmful patterns from continuing. They're not walls but filters, allowing nurturing energy to flow while blocking toxicity. Most importantly, I learned that my worth was never the variable in the equation of family dysfunction. It remained constant, unaffected by others' inability to recognize it. In embracing this truth, I found not just healing but transformation. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who didn't respect your time, resources, or feelings? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help someone else recognize they deserve more than emotional leftovers. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content about creating healthy relationships and honoring your worth. Remember, you deserve a full plate in every relationship, not just whatever happens to be left over after everyone else has been served. My name is Madison Hayes, 28 years old, and after 8 long years serving my country overseas, I was finally coming home for Christmas. 3 holidays missed, 3 years of empty chairs and FaceTime calls that cut out at the worst moments. I'd counted down the days, packed my bags with carefully chosen gifts, and even splurged on a new dress for Christmas dinner. Then my phone buzzed. One message from my father. "Christmas is better without you. Better not come." My fingers trembled as I typed just one word, understood. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how 10 missed calls and a family lawyer changed everything. Growing up in Oak Ridge, Pennsylvania wasn't extraordinary, but it was mine. Our 2-story colonial house on Maple Street, with its slightly crooked mailbox and my mother's obsessive flower beds, was where I learned what family meant, both the good and the complicated. My last truly happy Christmas before enlisting still plays in my mind like a favorite movie scene. I was 20, home from college for winter break, and the house smelled like cinnamon and pine. My mother, Kathleen, had outdone herself with decorations that year. Twinkling lights framed every window, and the tree reached so close to the ceiling that the angel on top looked like she was whispering secrets to the crown molding. "Madison, come help with these cookies," Mom called from the kitchen, flour dusting her cheeks like early snowfall. My younger sister Amber, then 18, was already there, meticulously decorating sugar cookies with the precision of a surgeon. Everything Amber did was perfect. Her grades, her appearance, her ability to please our parents without seeming to try. "Don't burn them this time," she teased, nudging me with her elbow. That was one time, I protested, tying on an apron. And Dad ate them anyway. Speaking of my father, Richard Hayes entered the kitchen at that moment, carrying another box of decorations from the attic. At 53, he still looked like the college football player he once was, broad-shouldered and imposing, with salt and pepper hair that only made him look more distinguished. "The business receipts need organizing before year-end," he said instead of hello, eyes finding mine immediately. "You should spend some time in the office tomorrow, Madison. Start learning the ropes." Hayes Hardware had been in the family for 3 generations. My grandfather built it from nothing, my father expanded it to 3 locations, and I was supposed to take it over someday. It was understood, expected, inevitable, except in my own heart. "It's Christmas break," Richard, my mother, intervened, her voice carrying that gentle warning tone she'd perfected over 25 years of marriage. "Let the girl breathe." My brother Tyler walked in, saving me from responding. At 24, he was the peacekeeper, the one who could diffuse tension with a well-timed joke or distraction. "Who wants to help me hang the porch lights?" Dad's attempt last year looked like drunk spiders had a party. "I'll help," I volunteered immediately, shooting him a grateful glance. Outside in the cold December air, Tyler handed me a string of lights. "You know you can't avoid the conversation forever," he said quietly. "Dad's already talking about moving you into the assistant manager position next summer." "I don't want it, Ty." The words came out more forcefully than I intended. "I've never wanted it." "Then you need to tell him." Directly. I did tell him, 3 days after Christmas. I sat my parents down and explained that I'd spoken with a military recruiter, that I wanted to serve my country, see the world, and use the education benefits for graduate school afterward. The silence that followed felt like a physical weight. Then my father stood up, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "No daughter of mine is joining the military," he said, voice dangerously quiet. "This conversation is over." But it wasn't over. 2 weeks later, I signed the papers. The day I left for basic training, my mother cried, Amber looked bewildered, and Tyler hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. My father didn't come to say goodbye. "He'll come around," my mother assured me. "He just needs time." Time, as it turned out, only seemed to calcify his disappointment. During my first deployment, the letters from home grew shorter and less frequent. My mother called when she could, always careful to mention that Dad was just busy at the store or working late. Amber graduated college with honors and immediately joined the family business, stepping effortlessly into the role I'd rejected. Tyler kept me most connected, sending emails with family updates and occasional photos from holidays I missed. In one Christmas picture from my 3rd year away, I noticed my father had removed the photos of me in uniform from the mantle. When I asked Tyler about it, he took 3 days to respond. "Dad's going through some stuff. Don't take it personally." But how could I not? With each passing year, the distance grew, not just physically but emotionally. My mother's calls became scheduled and somewhat formal. Amber's successes were reported to me like news bulletins about a distant acquaintance. My father spoke to me only when he happened to be nearby when my mother called, his contributions limited to questions about when I'd get this military business out of my system. 8 years passed this way. 8 years of growing into a person my family didn't know, serving alongside people who became closer than blood, missing birthdays and graduations and funerals. 8 years of trying to bridge a gap that seemed to widen no matter what I did. And still, every year around December, I felt the pull of home like a physical ache. Christmas in Oak Ridge, with snow that actually stuck to the ground and carolers who still went door to door. Christmas with my mother's sugar cookies and Tyler's terrible eggnog and even Amber's too perfect gift wrapping. Christmas with the family that, despite everything, I still long to be part of. So when my commanding officer approved my holiday leave for the first time in 3 years, the decision to go home felt both terrifying and inevitable. I was returning as a stranger, a ghost of the daughter and sister they'd once known, hoping to find my way back. The military changes you in ways civilians can never fully understand. You learn to sleep anywhere, eat anything, and function on minimal rest. You develop an alertness that never quite turns off and friendships forged in stress and danger that make ordinary relationships seem shallow by comparison. Rachel Wilson became that person for me, the friend who knew my quirks, fears, and strengths better than anyone back home ever had. We met during my second deployment when we shared a tent with 4 other women in the scorching desert heat. "Your dad still giving you the silent treatment?" Rachel asked one night as we sat outside our barracks, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of purple and gold. She was from Montana, with a direct way of speaking that initially seemed harsh, but that I'd come to appreciate. "It's evolved into the minimal words treatment," I replied, scrolling through the brief text exchange I'd had with my father that week. Asked him how the business was doing, got back, "Fine." One word, no punctuation. Rachel shook her head. "Family is weird, Hayes. They can hurt you in ways strangers never could because they know exactly where to aim." Profound, I teased, but she wasn't wrong. "My old man was the same way when I enlisted," she continued. "Didn't speak to me for 2 years. Now he wears a proud Army dad hat to the grocery store and tells everyone his daughter is a hero." "What changed?" Rachel's expression grew serious. "I nearly died. Convoy hit an IED. When he got that call saying I was in critical condition, suddenly all the stuff he was mad about didn't matter anymore." I didn't know then how prophetic her words would be. 3 months later, during what should have been a routine patrol, our vehicle hit a roadside bomb. The explosion is still a blur in my memory, fragments of sound and sensation rather than a cohesive event. The ringing in my ears. The taste of dust and blood. The weight of equipment suddenly feeling like it was crushing me. I remember thinking, with strange clarity, my father will hear about this from a stranger. I survived with a concussion, minor shrapnel wounds, and a new perspective. Rachel wasn't so lucky. She lost part of her left leg below the knee. During her recovery, I spent every available moment at the military hospital, watching her struggle through pain and phantom sensations, determination hardening her face during physical therapy. "You know what I keep thinking?" she said one afternoon, sweat beading on her forehead as she worked with her new prosthetic. "All the stupid arguments, all the grudges I've held, none of it matters. Not a single bit." Her words stayed with me. When my commanding officer mentioned I was eligible for discharge in 6 months if I chose not to re-enlist, the decision felt clear in a way it hadn't before. It was time to go home, time to at least try to repair what was broken. I started small, sending more frequent emails, making actual phone calls instead of just texts. My mother responded with cautious enthusiasm, as though afraid I might withdraw again if she seemed too eager. "We've missed you so much, Madison," she said during one call, her voice catching. "The house just isn't the same without you." Amber was polite but distant, asking surface-level questions about my life without really engaging with the answers. Still, it was progress from the near silence of recent years. "The assistant manager at the Brunswick store is leaving," she mentioned during one conversation. "Dad's been working overtime trying to find a replacement." I recognized the implied question and chose to sidestep it. "That sounds stressful for him. How's he handling it?" "You know, Dad," she replied, which wasn't really an answer at all. Tyler was the most enthusiastic, immediately falling back into our old rapport as though the years and distance hadn't happened. "So you're really coming home?" "For Christmas," he asked when I finally told him my plans. "Man, Mom's going to flip. In a good way. What about Dad?" I couldn't help asking. A pause. "He'll come around. Just give him time when you first get here, okay? He's had a rough year with the business and some health stuff." "Health stuff?" Is he okay? Just some high blood pressure. Nothing serious, Tyler assured me. But you know how he is, won't slow down, won't delegate. Having you home might actually be good for him, even if he doesn't realize it yet. My father himself remained a cipher. My attempts at conversation were met with brief responses, never initiating contact himself. When I explicitly mentioned coming home for Christmas, he replied only, "Your mother will be pleased." Not exactly a warm welcome, but not an outright rejection either. I chose to take it as tacit approval. The next few weeks passed in a flurry of preparations. I carefully selected gifts for everyone. A delicate scarf for my mother in her favorite shade of blue, a collector's edition of Tyler's favorite book series, a leather portfolio for Amber embossed with her initials. For my father, after much deliberation, I chose a vintage compass I'd found in an antique shop in Germany, engraved with the words, "To find your way home." Maybe it was too sentimental, too on the nose, but it felt right. A peace offering. When my discharge papers came through and my civilian status became official, the reality of returning home hit me full force. I was no longer First Lieutenant Hayes. I was just Madison again. The structure and purpose that had defined my life for 8 years were suddenly gone, replaced by possibilities both exciting and terrifying. Rachel helped me pack up my barracks room, sorting through 8 years of accumulated memories and mementos. "You're doing the right thing," she said, folding my civilian clothes with military precision. Family's complicated, but they're still family. What if it's too late? I asked, voicing the fear that had been growing as my departure date approached. What if too much has happened or not happened, and we can't find our way back to each other? Rachel stopped folding and looked me directly in the eyes. Then you'll know you tried. And believe me, that matters. Take it from someone who almost ran out of chances. The day before my flight, I called home one last time to confirm my arrival details. My mother answered, her voice warm with anticipation. "We can't wait to see you, sweetheart. I'm preparing all your favorites, that green bean casserole you always loved, and Tyler insisted I make my pecan pie." "That sounds perfect, Mom. Is Dad there? Can I talk to him?" A pause. "He's at the store, honey. End of year inventory. But he knows you're coming tomorrow. We've got your old room all ready." As I hung up, I felt a familiar mixture of hope and apprehension. Tomorrow I would be home, walking through the front door of a house that had started to feel more like a memory than a real place. Tomorrow I would come face to face with my father for the first time in years, and we would see if there was anything left to salvage. I checked my packed bags one last time, making sure the carefully wrapped gifts were secure. The compass for my father felt suddenly heavy with significance. Would he understand what I was trying to say, or would the gesture fall flat like so many of my attempts at connection over the years? It was too late for second-guessing. My flight was booked, my discharge was final, and my path was set. I was going home for Christmas, ready or not. "You're going to be fine," Rachel insisted, standing with me outside the airport security checkpoint. Even with her prosthetic leg, she'd insisted on driving me to the airport at an ungodly early hour. "Remember, you've faced actual combat. Family dinner is nothing compared to that." I laughed, but my stomach was in knots. At least in combat, I knew who my allies were. "Call me when you land," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. "And if it gets too intense, remember you've got a standing invitation to spend New Year's with me and my chaotic family in Montana." "I might take you up on that," I replied, only half joking. The flight from Denver to Philadelphia felt both endless and too short. I spent the 3 hours alternating between nervous anticipation and attempts to distract myself with movies I couldn't focus on. When the plane finally touched down, I took a deep breath before turning on my phone. 3 text messages appeared immediately. One from Tyler. "Let me know when you land. Can pick you up if your flight's on time." One from my mother. "Safe travels, sweetheart. So excited to see you tonight." And one from Amber. "Mom's been cleaning for 3 days straight. Consider yourself warned." Nothing from my father, but that wasn't surprising. I quickly replied to Tyler that my flight had landed on schedule and I'd take him up on the ride offer. While waiting for my luggage, I sent a group text to my family. Just landed in Philly. Can't wait to see everyone tonight. My mother and Tyler responded almost immediately with heart emojis and exclamation points. Amber sent a thumbs up. Again, silence from my father, but I pushed away the disappointment. He'd never been one for texting anyway. I collected my bags and met Tyler at the arrival's curb, his familiar figure leaning against his truck, looking older and more mature than I remembered. Look what the military sent back, he teased, pulling me into a bear hug that lifted me off my feet. You got shorter. You got uglier, I retorted, falling back into our old rhythm so easily it made my chest ache. The drive home was filled with Tyler's updates about his job as a high school science teacher, stories about his students, and careful avoidance of any direct questions about our father. I let him steer the conversation, content to watch the familiar landscape pass by the window, the mall where we'd hung out as teenagers, the park where I'd learned to ride a bike, the turn onto Maple Street that meant we were almost home. Mom's been cooking since dawn, Tyler said as we pulled into the driveway. And fair warning, the house looks like Christmas threw up everywhere. She's gone a little overboard this year. Because I'm coming home? I asked, trying not to sound too hopeful. Tyler's hesitation was brief but noticeable. That and, well, Amber's boyfriend might be proposing on Christmas Day. Mom doesn't know I know, but I overheard them talking. So there's a lot of excitement in the air. That's wonderful, I said, genuinely happy for my sister despite the small pang of being outsider to such big family news. What's he like? Nathan? He's good people. Works in finance, treats her well. Dad approves, which you know is saying something. I nodded, reaching for my bags as Tyler parked. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out, expecting perhaps a welcome message from my mother who'd surely heard us arrive. Instead, I saw my father's name on the screen. After days of silence, he'd finally responded to my announcement that I was coming home. My heart lifted momentarily until I read the words, "Christmas is better without you. Better not come." I stared at the screen, reading and rereading the message, certain I must be misunderstanding. The words remained unchanged, stark and unambiguous. Maddie? You okay? Tyler was standing by the truck bed, watching me with concern. I couldn't find words. Instead, I handed him my phone, watching his expression change from confusion to shock to anger. This has to be a mistake, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Maybe someone has his phone. Or maybe it's a really bad joke. Is it? I asked, taking the phone back and staring at the message again. After 8 years of barely speaking to me, is it really that surprising? The hurt was immediate and overwhelming, like a physical blow. All the careful preparations, the thoughtfully chosen gifts, the rehearsed conversations, all suddenly pointless. The compass in my luggage now seemed like a sad joke. I'll go talk to him, Tyler started, but I shook my head. No. He's made himself clear. Pride rose up like a shield, protecting me from the full impact of the rejection. I'm not going to force myself where I'm not wanted. But Mom and Amber can visit me somewhere else, I finished firmly. I'm not ruining everyone's Christmas with this drama. My fingers moved almost of their own accord, typing a single word in response to my father's message. Understood. Then I turned to Tyler, who looked torn between loyalty to me and the rest of the family waiting inside. I'm going to get a hotel room. Don't tell them about the message yet. Just say something came up, and I'll be delayed a few days. Maddie, please. I need some time, Ty. My military training kicked in, helping me compartmentalize the emotional turmoil and focus on immediate logistics. I'll call you tomorrow, I promise. But right now, I need to not be here. He argued further, of course. Offered alternatives, compromises, even suggested confronting our father immediately. But in the end, he respected my decision, helping me find a decent hotel in town and driving me there in uncomfortable silence. "This isn't right," he said as I checked in. "None of this is right. Welcome home, right?" I tried to joke, but it fell flat. "I'll call you tomorrow, Tyler. I just need tonight to process this." Alone in my sterile hotel room, the full weight of what had happened finally hit me. I'd traveled thousands of miles, left behind the only life I'd known for 8 years, all to receive the clearest possible message that I wasn't welcome in my childhood home. I unpacked just enough for the night, leaving the Christmas gifts in my suitcase. The compass for my father seemed to mock me from its carefully wrapped box. To find your way home. As if home was still a place that existed for me. That night, I ordered room service I couldn't taste and watched holiday movies with the sound muted. My phone buzzed occasionally, Tyler checking in, my mother wondering why I wasn't answering her calls, even Amber sending a confused text about my whereabouts. I responded only to Tyler, asking him to give me space and assuring him I was safe. To the others, I maintained silence, unable to figure out what to say or how to say it. Did they know about my father's message? Were they complicit in my exclusion or innocent bystanders? The uncertainty kept me paralyzed. As Christmas Eve approached, I remained in limbo, extending my hotel stay and venturing out only for necessities. I avoided the parts of town where I might run into family or old acquaintances, keeping to anonymous shopping centers and chain restaurants where I could blend into the holiday crowds. Each night, I checked my phone for any further communication from my father, an apology, an explanation, even a confirmation of his initial rejection. There was nothing but silence, which somehow hurt more than another hurtful message would have. I was a stranger in my hometown, more alone than I'd ever felt in foreign countries surrounded by actual strangers. At least there, I'd had purpose and identity. Here, I was just the daughter who'd been told not to come home for Christmas. 3 days into my self-imposed exile, I decided I couldn't spend another minute in the hotel room. The walls were closing in, and the cheerful holiday decorations in the lobby had become an exercise in emotional torture. I needed air, movement, something to distract me from the constant replay of my father's message in my head. I bundled up against the December cold and headed to Riverside Park, reasoning that on a weekday morning, it would be nearly empty. The familiar paths along the frozen river brought back memories, summer picnics, learning to ride a bike, high school track practice. This town was imprinted on me whether I wanted it to be or not. Lost in thought, I didn't notice the approaching figure until she called my name. "Madison? Madison Hayes, is that you?" I looked up to see Jessica Parker, my best friend from high school, staring at me with delighted surprise. Her red hair was shorter now, and she pushed a stroller containing a bundled-up toddler. "Jess," I said, genuine pleasure breaking through my gloom. "It's been forever." 8 years, give or take, she agreed, hugging me awkwardly around the stroller. "What are you doing here?" "I thought you were still overseas." "Got discharged. Civilian life now." "That's amazing. And just in time for Christmas with your family." She glanced around. "Are they here too?" The question hit like a punch to the stomach. "No, I'm just getting some air." Jessica's brow furrowed. "Wait, you're not staying with them?" I thought. She stopped herself, looking uncomfortable. "Thought what?" She shifted, adjusting the blanket over her sleeping child. "It's just, I ran into your dad at the hardware store yesterday. When I asked if he was excited about you coming home, he said you'd decided not to come for Christmas after all. That you were too busy." The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, but somehow it still did. "He said I decided not to come?" Jessica nodded, clearly sensing she'd stepped into complicated territory. "He seemed disappointed. Said something about military life changing people's priorities." A disbelieving laugh escaped me. "That's not exactly how it happened." Her expression softened with concern. "Did you want to talk about it?" Ben's down for his nap, and I could use some adult conversation that doesn't revolve around Paw Patrol. We ended up at a coffee shop downtown, Jessica's son still sleeping peacefully in his stroller. Over steaming lattes, I told her everything, the years of strained communication, my decision to come home, And finally, the devastating text message. Wow, Jessica said when I finished. I don't even know what to say. That doesn't sound like the Mr. Hayes I remember. People change, I said, but the explanation felt hollow even to me. Maybe, but this seems extreme. Has he been having problems? Health issues or something? I shrugged. Tyler mentioned high blood pressure, but said it wasn't serious. Jessica looked thoughtful. You know, now that I think about it, I heard my mom talking about your dad a few months back. Something about him not seeming like himself at the Chamber of Commerce meeting. More forgetful, she said. He's only 61, I pointed out. Not exactly at the forgetful stage. True. She hesitated. There's something else you should probably know, especially if you're planning to avoid your family while you're here. What's that? Your sister Amber is getting engaged on Christmas Day. It's supposed to be this big surprise moment during dinner, but Nathan told my husband since they play basketball together. That's probably why the house is extra festive this year. Though Tyler had hinted at this, hearing it confirmed made it real. My sister's special moment, the culmination of a relationship I knew almost nothing about. And my father didn't want me there for it. So that's it, I murmured, pieces clicking into place. He doesn't want me stealing Amber's thunder. Jessica looked skeptical. By simply existing at a family dinner? That seems extreme even for a protective dad. You don't know how things have been, I said. He's barely acknowledged my existence for years. This is just the logical conclusion. We parted ways with promises to meet again before I left town, whenever that might be. Back in my hotel room, I turned over this new information, trying to make sense of it all. My father was actively lying about my absence, painting me as the villain in his narrative. Was it about Amber's engagement? Some lingering resentment about my career choice? Or something else entirely? The next day brought another chance encounter. I'd ventured to a small bookstore on the edge of town, looking for something to occupy my evenings, when I literally bumped into my mother's sister, Aunt Patricia. Madison? She exclaimed, dropping the book she'd been examining. What on earth are you doing here? Kathleen said you weren't coming until after New Year's. Another lie. The realization that my father's deception extended beyond a casual comment to an old acquaintance hit me hard. There's been a change of plans, I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. Aunt Patricia studied my face, her expression shifting from surprise to concern. Is everything okay? You look upset. I'd never been particularly close to my mother's sister, but something about her genuine concern broke through my carefully maintained composure. To my horror, tears sprang to my eyes. I don't think I'm welcome at home, I admitted, the words painful to speak aloud. Her confusion seemed genuine. What are you talking about? Your mother has been talking about your visit for weeks. She's decorated your old room and everything. In the bookstore's quiet reading nook, I showed her my father's message. Her shock appeared genuine. This doesn't make any sense, she said, rereading the text. Richard can be stubborn and old-fashioned, but this isn't like him at all. 8 years of barely speaking to me suggests otherwise, I pointed out. Aunt Patricia's expression grew troubled. I won't pretend your father hasn't been difficult about your military service. He's always been set in his ways. But this level of cruelty. She shook her head. Something's not right here. She insisted on buying me lunch, and over sandwiches at the cafe next door, filled me in on family happenings I'd missed. My mother apparently kept my room exactly as I'd left it, refreshing the bedding seasonally, just in case. Tyler had been dating a fellow teacher for almost a year. And Amber. The engagement is supposed to be a big surprise, Aunt Patricia confirmed. Though I suspect Amber knows it's coming. That girl always was 2 steps ahead of everyone. Do you think that's why Dad doesn't want me there? I asked. To keep the focus on Amber? She considered this. It wouldn't be completely out of character for him to be overprotective of Amber. She's always been his little princess. Seeing my expression, she added hastily, but sending a message like that goes beyond playing favorites. It's deliberately hurtful. When we parted, she promised not to mention our meeting to my mother, though she clearly disapproved of the secrecy. Family problems should be dealt with directly, she advised. Take it from someone who wasted years not speaking to her own sister over a misunderstanding. I returned to my hotel room with more questions than answers. The days crept by, Christmas Eve approaching with a sense of dread rather than anticipation. I still hadn't responded to my mother's increasingly concerned messages or Amber's confused texts. Only Tyler knew where I was and why, and he was clearly torn between respecting my wishes and pushing me to confront the situation. On the morning of the 5th day since receiving my father's message, everything changed. I woke to the insistent buzzing of my phone, not the occasional text or call I'd been ignoring, but a continuous stream of notifications. 10 missed calls in the span of an hour. 3 from my mother. 2 from Amber. 4 from Tyler. And most surprisingly, 1 from a number labeled Hayes Family Lawyer. Before I could process this barrage, my phone rang again. Tyler. Something was very wrong. I answered on the 3rd ring, my heart pounding. Tyler? What's going on? His voice came through breathless and strained. Dad's in the hospital. Heart attack. It's bad, Maddie. The world seemed to tilt slightly. Despite everything, the news hit me like a physical blow. When? What happened? Last night. He was at the store late, doing inventory. The night security guard found him. Tyler's voice cracked. He's stable now, but it was touch and go for a while. The doctors say he's not out of the woods yet. I sat down heavily on the edge of the hotel bed. I'm so sorry, Ty. That's awful. There's more. He took a deep breath. Mom was looking through his phone to call some business contacts, and she saw the message he sent you. We all saw it. A cold feeling spread through my chest. Oh! Maddie, he had no right to send that. No right at all. Mom is devastated, not just about Dad's health, but about what he did. We all are. I assumed you knew, I admitted. That you were all in agreement about me not coming. God, no. The horror in Tyler's voice seemed genuine. How could you think that? We've been waiting for you to come home for years. But Dad has been. Tyler hesitated. He hasn't been himself lately. The doctors think he might have had some minor episodes before this major attack. Memory issues, personality changes. Mom's been worried about him for months, but you know how stubborn he is about seeing doctors. The revelation added another layer of complexity to an already confusing situation. So you think the message was because of his health issues? I don't know. Maybe partly. Tyler sounded exhausted, but that doesn't excuse it. Nothing does. Mom's been calling you nonstop. She knows you're in town. I had to tell her after Dad's attack. She's begging you to come to the hospital. I closed my eyes, torn between the instinct to rush to my family during a crisis and the lingering hurt of my father's rejection. I don't know if I can face him right now, Ty. You don't have to see him yet if you're not ready, he assured me. But Mom and Amber, they need you, Maddie. We all do. The sincerity in his voice broke through my defenses. Whatever issues existed between me and my father, the rest of my family was in pain. And despite 8 years of distance, they were still my family. I'll come, I said finally. Give me half an hour. The hospital waiting room was a study in tension and exhaustion. My mother sat rigidly in an uncomfortable chair, her normally perfect appearance disheveled, dark circles under her eyes. Amber paced by the window, stopping occasionally to check her phone. They both looked up when I entered, expressions changing from weariness to shock. Madison, my mother whispered, rising unsteadily to her feet. Oh, sweetheart. And then she was hugging me, her familiar perfume mingling with the antiseptic hospital smell as she clung to me like I might disappear. Over her shoulder, I saw Amber watching uncertainly, her eyes red from crying. I'm so sorry, my mother said, pulling back to look at me. So sorry about your father's message. I had no idea. None of us did. It's okay, Mom, I said automatically, the words feeling hollow. It's not okay, Amber interjected, stepping forward. It was cruel and inexcusable. The vehemence in her voice surprised me. My perfect, proper sister looked genuinely angry not at me, but on my behalf. It was so unexpected that I didn't know how to respond. Tyler appeared with coffee cups for everyone, his relief at seeing me palpable. The doctor's in with Dad now. They're saying the next 24 hours are critical. We settled into the uncomfortable waiting room chairs, the conversation halting and awkward at first. 8 years of distance created a chasm not easily bridged, especially under such stressful circumstances. We thought you changed your mind about coming, my mother said finally, her hands nervously shredding a tissue. When you didn't arrive and didn't answer our calls. Richard said you texted that something came up with your discharge paperwork. Another lie. That's not what happened. We know that now, Amber said quietly. We saw his message to you and your response. I stared at the linoleum floor, embarrassed somehow, as though I'd been caught doing something wrong rather than being the recipient of rejection. I didn't know what to say to any of you after that. It seemed easier to just stay away. He's been doing this for years, hasn't he? My mother's question was soft but direct. Coming between us? I looked up, confused. What do you mean? She exchanged glances with Amber and Tyler. After you left for your second deployment, your letters suddenly stopped coming regularly. Richard said you were probably too busy with your new responsibilities to write home often. But I wrote every week, I protested. And I sent emails when I could. We got maybe 1 letter a month, Amber said. And most of them were brief, impersonal. A sick feeling grew in my stomach. That's not possible. I wrote detailed letters. I asked questions about what was happening at home. I told you about my friends, my experiences, everything I could share. Tyler looked grim. Dad always collected the mail. He was always the first one home. You think he was intercepting my letters? The idea seemed so invasive, so controlling, that I could hardly process it. I don't think, my mother said, her voice hardening. I know. When I was looking through his phone last night, I checked his email too. There's a folder labeled with your name. It has emails you sent us over the years, emails we never received. The betrayal cut deep. All those years I'd thought my family was growing distant, responding with increasing brevity to my attempts at connection. And meanwhile, my father had been actively sabotaging our communication. There's more, Amber said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Last year, when I was helping Dad organize the home office, I found a stack of unopened letters from you in his desk drawer. I confronted him about it, and he said they'd arrived after you'd already called with the same updates, so he hadn't bothered to distribute them. I knew something wasn't right, my mother continued, anger seeping into her tone. The Madison I raised wouldn't just stop communicating with her family. But Richard always had explanations. The military was changing you. You were too busy. You'd found a new life and didn't need us anymore. And you believed him. I couldn't keep the hurt from my voice. I didn't want to, she admitted, tears filling her eyes. But he was so convincing. And when you did call, you seemed reserved, like you were holding back, because your responses were always so formal and brief. I thought you were all pulling away from me. Tyler reached over to squeeze my hand. It was a perfect storm of misunderstanding. And Dad orchestrating it all. But why? I asked, the question that had been haunting me for years finally spoken aloud. Why would he go to such lengths to separate me from all of you? My mother's explanation was interrupted by the arrival of a doctor, his expression professionally neutral as he approached our group. Mrs. Hayes? Your husband is awake and asking for you. She stood, smoothing her rumpled clothes with shaking hands. Can my children come too? The doctor hesitated. He's still very weak. Perhaps just one at a time after you. My mother turned to me, her expression resolute. Madison should go first. Panic flared in my chest. Mom, I don't think that's a good idea. He made it pretty clear he doesn't want to see me. That's exactly why you need to go, she insisted. This has gone on long enough. I looked to Tyler and Amber for support, but their expressions told me they agreed with our mother. After 8 years of manipulation and a near tragedy, it was time for a reckoning. All right, I conceded, my mouth dry with apprehension. But don't expect miracles. As I followed the doctor down the sterile hallway, I tried to prepare myself for what was coming. Would my father double down on his rejection? Would he even be lucid enough to recognize me? The beeping of monitors and antiseptic smell reminded me uncomfortably of the military hospital where I'd visited Rachel during her recovery. Outside my father's room, I paused, taking a deep breath. Whatever happened next would either begin healing 8 years of hurt or confirm that some breaks couldn't be mended. Either way, I needed to face it. I pushed open the door. The man in the hospital bed barely resembled the father I remembered. Richard Hayes had always been imposing, his presence filling any room he entered. Now he looked diminished, gray-faced, and connected to a tangle of monitors and 4 lines. His eyes were closed when I entered, and for a moment I thought he might be asleep. Kathleen? His voice was a rasp, his eyes opening to thin slits. It's Madison, Dad. I moved closer, hovering awkwardly at the bedside, unsure whether to sit or stand. His expression shifted through confusion, shock, and then something I couldn't quite identify, guilt, perhaps, or fear. Madison, he repeated, as though testing the sound of my name. You came. Mom asked me to. After what I... He closed his eyes briefly. I didn't think you would. I remained silent, the words I'd rehearsed in my head during countless imagined confrontations suddenly inadequate in the face of his frailty. Sit, he said finally, gesturing weakly to the chair beside the bed. If you're going to yell at me, I'd prefer you do it sitting down. Makes me feel less at a disadvantage. Despite everything, a small smile tugged at my lips. I'm not going to yell at you. You just had a heart attack. Might finish the job, then. His attempt at humor fell flat, the reality of his condition too serious for such jokes. I sat, maintaining a careful distance. Up close, I could see how much he'd aged, the lines around his eyes deeper, his hair now more white than gray. 8 years had changed us both. They found the message, I said finally. The one you sent me. They know I didn't choose to stay away. Something like shame crossed his face. I wasn't thinking clearly. And were you not thinking clearly when you intercepted my letters too? Or deleted my emails? Or lied to everyone about what I said? His eyes widened slightly. They told you. Yes, Dad, they told me. 8 years of manipulating my relationship with Mom, Tyler, and Amber. 8 years of making me think my family was drifting away from me when it was you all along. The anger I'd promised not to express seeped into my voice despite my best efforts. I want to know why. He looked away, his gaze fixing on the window where winter sunlight cast weak patterns on the sterile floor. I was afraid, he admitted, the words seeming to cost him. Of what? Losing you. His eyes met mine again, and to my shock, they glistened with tears. When you first joined the military, I was angry. You'd rejected everything I tried to give you, the business, security, a future I understood. But then you were deployed and the anger turned to fear. Constant, grinding fear. I remembered my mother's words about his brother, lost to another long-ago war. Your brother, Eric, died in Vietnam. 22 years old. He nodded slightly, but it wasn't just that. My father, he served in World War II. Came back a different man. Distant. Cold. Violent sometimes. He abandoned us when I was 14. Just walked out one day and never came back. This was family history I'd never heard, revelations that cast my father's behavior in a new, if not excusable light. So, when I got your first letter describing a firefight you'd been in, His voice faltered. I couldn't bear it. Couldn't bear to share that fear with your mother, to watch her go through what my mother went through. So I edited the letter. Took out the frightening parts. Told myself I was protecting them. And then you just kept going, I supplied, beginning to understand the twisted logic that had guided his actions. Editing turned to intercepting turned to lying. He nodded, shame evident in his expression. It was wrong. I know that. But each step seemed necessary at the time. Each lie required another to maintain it. And then you started pulling away, which was exactly what I was trying to prevent. Because I thought my family didn't want to hear from me. The irony was almost too much to bear. Every brief response, every unanswered question confirmed what I feared, that I'd become a stranger to you all. I never meant for that to happen, he said quietly. I just wanted to keep you safe. To keep all of us safe. By destroying our relationship? Great plan, Dad. He flinched at my sarcasm, but didn't argue. The doctors think I've been having minor cardiac episodes for months, affecting my judgment, my memory. But that's no excuse for that text message. When Amber told me she thought her boyfriend was going to propose on Christmas, something just snapped in me. All I could think was that you were coming home to danger, emotional danger, not physical, but my mind couldn't separate the two anymore. So you decided to hurt me first, I concluded. Push me away before I could be hurt. It sounds insane when you say it like that. It was insane, Dad. And cruel. We sat in silence for a long moment, the only sounds the steady beeping of monitors and the muffled hospital announcements from the hallway. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said finally. What I did, it can't be undone with an apology. No, it can't, I agreed. 8 years of manipulation doesn't disappear because you say you're sorry. He nodded, accepting this. For what it's worth, and I know it's not worth much right now, I am sorry, Madison. More than I can express. Another silence fell between us, heavy with years of misunderstandings and deliberate deceptions. Part of me wanted to walk out, to tell him that some breaches of trust couldn't be repaired. But another part, the part that remembered him teaching me to ride a bike, cheering at my high school graduation, hugging me fiercely the day before I left for basic training, that part couldn't quite let go. The family lawyer called me, I said, changing the subject slightly. Why? A look of confusion crossed my father's face. Martin called you? I didn't ask him to. Well, he did. Left a message about needing to speak urgently. Understanding dawned in my father's eyes. That would be about the will. I changed it after you enlisted. Removed you as a beneficiary. The revelation stung, though it wasn't entirely surprising. Another punishment for choosing my own path? Another mistake, he corrected quietly. One I planned to fix when I saw Martin last week. I'd been doing a lot of thinking lately, even before this. He gestured at the hospital equipment surrounding him. About the kind of father I've been. The kind of man. A knock at the door interrupted us. A nurse entered, followed by my mother, whose anxious gaze darted between us as though checking for signs of conflict. Everything okay in here? She asked cautiously. I stood, needing space from the intensity of the conversation. We were just talking. Dad can fill you in. Madison, my father called as I reached the door. I turned, one hand on the doorknob. Will you come back later? There's more I need to say. I hesitated, torn between self-protection and the pull of potential reconciliation. I'll think about it. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by the revelations and emotions of the past hour. My father's actions had been inexcusable, born of fear twisted into control. And yet, seeing him so diminished, hearing the regret in his voice, made it impossible to maintain the righteous anger that had sustained me for days. Tyler found me there, offering a cup of terrible hospital coffee without comment. How much did you know? I asked after taking a sip. About Dad's interference? I suspected something wasn't right, he admitted. The few times I visited you during leave, the Madison I saw didn't match the distant, uninterested sister Dad described in your supposed messages. But I never imagined the extent of it. He says the doctors think his health affected his judgment recently. Tyler nodded. They mentioned the possibility of TAs, mini strokes that can cause personality changes, impaired decision-making. But that doesn't explain 8 years of manipulation. No, I agreed. That was just Dad being Dad, controlling, afraid of what he couldn't understand or manage. We were interrupted by the arrival of a distinguished older man in an expensive suit, Martin Collins, the Hayes family lawyer for as long as I could remember. His expression brightened when he saw me. "Madison? Thank goodness. I've been trying to reach you." He extended his hand, which I shook automatically. "I'm so sorry about your father's condition. How is he doing?" "Stable," Tyler answered. "The doctors are cautiously optimistic." Martin nodded, relieved. "That's good to hear. I hate to discuss business at a time like this, but your father was quite insistent when he came to see me last week. He wanted changes made to his will and various legal documents immediately." "Changes?" I repeated, confused. "He just told me he planned to see you about changes, but hadn't yet." The lawyer shook his head. "No, he definitely came in. Last Tuesday afternoon. Spent nearly 2 hours reviewing everything. He was particularly focused on reinstating you as a beneficiary and adding you back to the business succession plan." I stared at him, trying to process this information. "Are you saying he already changed his will to include me again? Before his heart attack? Before my visit was even confirmed?" "Yes, indeed. He was quite determined about it. Said he'd made a terrible mistake and needed to fix it before it was too late." Martin studied my face. I gathered there had been some estrangement, but he seemed genuinely remorseful. Tyler squeezed my shoulder. "See? He was trying to make things right even before all this happened." The revelation cast my father's text message in an even more confusing light. If he'd already taken steps to reconcile legally, why send such a hurtful message days later? "The doctors mentioned his judgment might have been affected by mini-strokes," I said slowly. "Could that explain the contradiction?" Martin looked thoughtful. "I'm not a medical professional, of course, but your father did seem somewhat disoriented during our meeting. He kept losing his train of thought, then becoming frustrated with himself. I assumed it was the emotional nature of our discussion, but in light of his current condition. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it offered a possible explanation for the escalation from long-term manipulation to outright cruelty. The father who'd carefully ensured I was written back into his will was not the same father who'd texted me not to come home. "I should get back to your mother," Martin said, checking his watch. "But I wanted you to know about the changes. Your father was very clear that he wanted to make amends, in a legal sense at least." As he walked away, Tyler and I exchanged looks that contained equal parts confusion, hope, and lingering hurt. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking." I paused, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions. "I'm thinking that nothing is as simple as it seemed 5 days ago. Or even 5 hours ago." "Welcome to family," Tyler said with a wry smile. "It's never simple. Just occasionally worth the complications." As we rejoined Amber in the waiting room, I found myself cautiously open to the possibility that he might be right. Christmas Eve in a hospital waiting room wasn't what any of us had planned. The fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell were a far cry from the warm glow of the family Christmas tree and my mother's cinnamon apple potpourri. Yet as the 4 of us, my mother, Tyler, Amber, and I gathered in the small private room the hospital staff had found for us, there was an unexpected intimacy to our improvised celebration. "I brought these from home," my mother said, pulling carefully wrapped packages from a tote bag. It didn't seem right to postpone completely. She'd brought a box of her famous sugar cookies, slightly crumbled from the journey but still bearing their meticulous decorations. Tyler contributed a thermos of eggnog, only slightly spiked. It's still a hospital, and Amber had managed to find a tiny artificial tree in the hospital gift shop, now adorned with paperclip angels and tongue depressor stars created by a helpful pediatric nurse. It was simultaneously the strangest and most genuine Christmas gathering I could remember. "Dad's stable enough to be moved out of ICU tomorrow," Amber reported after a call with his doctor. "They're still concerned about possible neurological effects from the TIAs, but his cardiac function is improving." "That's wonderful news," my mother said, the relief evident in her voice despite her exhaustion. She turned to me, her expression softening. "Madison, I know this isn't the homecoming any of us imagined, especially after everything you've learned." I shook my head, still processing the revelations of the past 24 hours. "I don't even know how to feel about it all yet, Mom. 8 years of thinking my family was drifting away from me, only to find out Dad was systematically ensuring exactly that. It's a lot to take in." "For all of us," Tyler agreed. "Finding out we've been manipulated, that the distance we felt wasn't real but manufactured. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it." Amber, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. I knew something wasn't right. Her voice was soft but firm. "Those times I called you and the conversation felt awkward, stilted, it never made sense. The Madison who left for the military wasn't someone who would just stop caring about her family. But Dad was so convincing when he'd say things like, 'She's moved on,' or 'The military is her family now.' Why didn't you say something?" I couldn't keep the hurt from my voice. I tried a few times. But Dad always had explanations, and Mom was so sensitive about the whole subject. She glanced apologetically at our mother. "And then I found those letters in his desk, and I knew for sure something was wrong. But by then it had been years, and I didn't know how to fix it. None of us did," my mother said, reaching across to take my hand. "We let fear and misunderstanding keep us apart. But that ends now." Her grip tightened. "Whatever happens with your father, whatever you decide about your relationship with him, I want you to know that you always have a place in this family. Always." The sincerity in her voice brought tears to my eyes. "I've missed you all so much," I admitted. "Even when I was angry, even when I thought you didn't want me around, I missed you." Tyler raised his paper cup of eggnog. "To family reunions, better late than never." We all touched cups in a makeshift toast, the simple gesture somehow more meaningful than any elaborate Christmas tradition. Later that evening, after my mother and Amber had gone to get some rest at home, I found myself alone in my father's hospital room. He was sleeping, the harsh overhead lights dimmed, his face relaxed in a way it hadn't been during our earlier confrontation. I sat quietly, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest, thinking about the contradictions of the man before me. The father who had been so proud at my high school graduation. The businessman who couldn't understand why his daughter wouldn't want the security of a family enterprise. The frightened son of a World War II veteran who associated military service with loss and trauma. The manipulative parent who had systematically isolated me from my family. The regretful man who had changed his will to include me again before my visit was even confirmed. Which version was the real Richard Hayes? Perhaps all of them. He stirred, eyes opening slightly. "Madison? You came back." "I said I would think about it," I replied. "I thought about it." He attempted to sit up straighter, wincing at the effort. "I've been thinking too. About what I need to say to you." "Dad, you don't have to." "I do." His voice was stronger now, more like the father I remembered. "What I did was unforgivable. Not just the text message, but all of it, the letters, the emails, the lies. I told myself I was protecting the family, but I was really just trying to control a situation that frightened me. I was a coward, Madison." The admission, so at odds with the strong, confident father I'd grown up with, took me aback. "I don't expect forgiveness," he continued. "I'm not even asking for it. But I want you to know that I am proud of you, of the woman you've become, the service you've given." I've never said that, and I should have. Every day for the past 8 years, I should have said it. I sat with his words, neither accepting nor rejecting them yet. "Why did you change your will last week? Before you knew I was definitely coming home." He looked surprised that I knew about that. "Martin told you? Good." "I was afraid," he gestured at the hospital equipment. "I was afraid I wouldn't get the chance to tell you myself." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I changed it because it was wrong. Simple as that." I'd been having these episodes. Moments of clarity where I could suddenly see what I'd done to our family. To you. I needed to fix what I could while I could. And then you sent that text. His expression clouded with shame. The doctors think it was another TIA, a more severe one. They say it can cause irrational behavior, personality changes. But that's an explanation, not an excuse. The cruel message I sent came from somewhere inside me, episode or not. The honesty of this admission affected me more than any apology could have. Not justification, not deflection, just acknowledgement of the harm he'd caused. I don't know if we can fix this, Dad, I said honestly. There's been too much damage, too many years lost. I know, he nodded slowly, but maybe we can build something new instead. Not picking up where we left off, that's impossible. But starting from here with truth between us. If you're willing. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was an opening, a possibility I hadn't allowed myself to consider in the days since receiving his message. I'm staying in town for a while, I said finally. We can talk more when you're stronger. Relief softened his features. I'd like that. The next morning, Christmas Day, brought an unexpected gathering. My father had been moved to a regular room, his condition stabilized enough that the doctors permitted a brief family visit. The tiny artificial tree was relocated from the waiting room to his bedside, and even Nathan, Amber's boyfriend, joined us. I had a whole proposal planned, he told me ruefully as we arranged chairs around the hospital bed. Champagne, string quartet, the works. Now I don't know whether to postpone or just go with the flow. I studied him, the nervous energy, the way he kept touching the pocket of his jacket where a ring box surely waited. My sister has never cared about the fancy stuff, I advised. Just the substance. He smiled gratefully. You sound just like Tyler described you. When Amber entered the room, Nathan didn't hesitate. Right there, in a hospital room with beeping monitors as background music and a tongue depressor startup tree as witness, he dropped to one knee. This isn't how I planned it, he began, but the past few days have shown me that we can't always plan for what life brings. What matters is facing it together. He produced a ring that caught the fluorescent lighting. Amber Hayes, will you marry me? The joy on my sister's face as she accepted both proposal and ring was unmistakable, and for perhaps the first time since receiving my father's message, I felt genuinely glad I had come home, even under these circumstances. I've been keeping a secret too, my mother announced after the engagement excitement had settled. She produced a worn envelope from her purse. Madison, this came for you years ago. Your father intercepted it, but I found it when I was looking through his desk for insurance papers. The return address showed Rachel Wilson's name, my closest friend from the military. The postmark was nearly 5 years old. She sent me something? And Dad kept it from me. The hurt was fresh, all over again. Open it, my mother encouraged gently. Inside was a photograph, Rachel and me in our uniforms, arms around each other's shoulders, desert landscape stretching behind us. On the back, Rachel had written, "To remind you that family comes in many forms. Missing you, battle buddy." With the photo was a short letter, her familiar handwriting bringing an immediate wave of nostalgia. Hayes, I know things are rough with your family right now. You don't talk about it much, but I can tell from your face when you get those short emails from home. I want you to remember that family isn't just who you're born to, it's also who you choose to stand beside. That said, don't give up on your blood family yet. My dad and I found our way back to each other, and maybe you and yours will too. Sometimes people need time to adjust their dreams for you to match the reality of who you've become. Keep your head down out here. I've got your 6. Rachel. The words, written years ago, felt eerily prescient now. I looked up to find my family watching me with varying expressions of concern and hope. She was right, I said finally. About all of it. The following weeks brought a new routine. My hotel room was abandoned in favor of my old bedroom at home, preserved just as my mother had said. My father's recovery progressed slowly but steadily, with physical therapy and neurological follow-ups filling our days. The family lawyer, Martin, helped us untangle the legal aspects of my father's manipulation, ensuring that communication channels couldn't be intercepted again. Most importantly, we really talked, as a family. About the years of separation, the misunderstandings, the hurt on all sides. About my experiences in the military, stories I'd tried to share in letters that never arrived. About Amber's relationship with Nathan, Tyler's teaching career, my mother's loneliness during my absence. We also talked about the future. My discharge from the military had left me at a crossroads, unsure of my next steps. To my surprise, it was my father who suggested a possibility I hadn't considered. The Brunswick store needs a manager, he said during one of our now regular conversations at his bedside. Someone with leadership experience, organizational skills. Someone who can think on their feet. Are you offering me a job, Dad? I asked, bemused by the reversal of our positions from 8 years ago. I'm suggesting a possibility, he clarified. No pressure. No expectations. Just an option, if you're interested. The business has always been there for any of you who want it. Not just who I decided should have it. I didn't accept immediately, needing time to consider whether rejoining the family business would be a step forward or backward. But the offer itself represented a fundamental shift in our relationship, from control to choice, from obligation to opportunity. As January arrived and my father was finally discharged from the hospital, our family gathered once more at the house on Maple Street. The Christmas decorations were still up, the presents still wrapped and waiting under a tree that had somehow survived without dropping all its needles. Better late than never, my mother declared, as we finally exchanged the gifts that should have been opened weeks earlier. When my father unwrapped the vintage compass I'd brought from Germany, his eyes filled with tears at the inscription, "To find your way home." I wasn't sure I'd still want to give it to you, I admitted, after everything that happened. But it feels right now. Thank you, he said simply, holding the compass carefully, as though it might break. I'll try to live up to it. That evening, as we sat around the living room with mugs of hot chocolate and the comfortable exhaustion that follows emotional catharsis, I realized something important. The family I'd returned to wasn't the idealized version I'd carried in my memories during 8 years of service. It was messier, more complicated, marked by human frailty and the capacity for both harm and healing. But it was real. And for the first time in years, it was truly mine to claim. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend overnight. The habits of distance and defensive barriers couldn't be dismantled in a few weeks of reconciliation. My father's health remained a concern, and the neurological effects of his mini-strokes meant our relationship would always carry an asterisk of uncertainty. Yet, as Rachel had written years ago, family comes in many forms. Sometimes it's the people who stand beside you in danger. Sometimes it's the people who share your blood but need to relearn how to share your life. Sometimes it's both, and more besides. I looked around at the faces of my family, tired but present, damaged but healing, and recognized the truth. Coming home isn't about returning to a place that remains unchanged in your absence. It's about finding where you belong in the present moment, with all its imperfections and possibilities. And for now, at least, I was exactly where I needed to be. Have you ever experienced a family misunderstanding that took years to resolve? Or received a message that completely changed your perspective on a relationship? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you found my story meaningful, subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share with someone who might need to hear that family reconciliation is possible, even after years of hurt. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the hardest journeys lead us exactly where we need to go.